Hello everybody, this is Tyler once again from the Character Workshop, and seeing that I now have lights where I can change the colors, I decided to make the lights for in here blue because, well, the Doctor's TARDIS is blue, and that's it. Anyways, welcome back to another Cave from England, and it's been quite a while since I've done a regular episode of this show. And today, for basically to end the first half of Season 8, we're going to be taking a look at the final story of Season 2 of Doctor Who, which is basically the 9th story of Season 2 and also the 17th story overall, and this one simply being titled The Time Meddler. So the beginning of the story takes place pretty much almost directly after the events of the chase, after the Doctor and Vicky, bid farewell to Ian and Barbara, and while they were in the TARDIS and they landed, they happened to find Steven inside the TARDIS after he stumbled in, after the whole, mess that was going on the planet Mechanus in the last story. The TARDIS then lands on a rocky beach, and the crew, of course, were being monitored by a monk, played by Peter Butterworth. And of course, the TARDIS itself was soon spotted by a Saxon villager by the name of Eldred, who runs to tell the headman of the village about it. And the Doctor, through investigating, establishes that the century that they're in, judged by a Viking helmet that he found, was basically the 11th century. Meanwhile, Stephen and Vicky explore the cliffs above, and both of them were witnessed by the monk. The Doctor then encounters Edith, which is basically the headsman of the village's wife, and he convinces her that he is a harmless traveler while, basically looking for more information. He then discovers that the year is 1066, since Harold Godwinson has not yet faced Harold at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. At a nearby monastery, monks are heard chanting, and arriving at the monastery, the Doctor then finds a gramophone, which is actually playing the chant. He then stops the gramophone, and then the monk then traps him inside a cell. While investigating further, Stephen and Vicky encounter Eldred and notice that he was wearing a wristwatch, which was dropped by the monk. The next morning, Stephen and Vicky were ambushed by the Saxons and were taken to the village council. They were able to convince the leader that they were just travelers and are given provisions to travel on. Vicky then hears from Edith that, she actually encountered the Doctor earlier, who was on his way to the monastery the previous night. Stephen and Vicky then visit the monastery, where the monk tries to dissuade them from entering, but basically gives himself away by describing the Doctor too accurately. Stephen and Vicky break in after dark. Then a Viking attacks Edith, and the Saxons go hunting for the invaders. One is struck down, while his companions, Sven and Ulf, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Eldred then is, badly wounded, and the leader of the tribe then, takes him to a monastery for help. While the monk is occupied with the Saxons, Stephen and Vicky find the gramophone that was playing the whole chant that the Doctor encountered earlier. They then discover that the Doctor had escaped through a secret passage, and they both return to the village. The Doctor, meanwhile, heads back to the monastery and gains the upper hand when the monk answers the door. The Doctor begins to question the monk. Meanwhile, the two Vikings ambush the Doctor and the monk, but are both overpowered. The monk slips away during the confrontation. He tries to persuade the villagers to light beacon fires on the cliff tops, secretly wishing to lure the Viking fleet to land. The leader, on the other hand, tells the monk that he agrees, but admits that to Edith that he suspects that there's danger. Stephen and Vicky then return to the monastery and investigate the crypt, where a heavy power cable extends from a sarcophagus. And looking inside, they discover that the monk himself actually has his own TARDIS, and that he must have originated from the same place as the Doctor. The Doctor then overpowers the monk upon the latter's return to the monastery. The monk then reveals his plan of destroying the Viking fleet, which would prevent the Battle of Stamford Bridge from happening, and leave the Saxon soldiers completely fresh to defeat William of Normandy and the Battle of Hastings. He boasts that his plan would accelerate mankind's development by centuries. The Doctor then denounces the monk for seeking to alter the course of history and forces him to reveal his TARDIS, where they both find Stephen and Vicky. The time travelers then piece together the monk's plan, which he insists is intended to stabilize England and benefit Western civilization. The two Vikings from earlier then form an alliance with the monk to tie up the Doctor's party, while the three of them take the neutron bomb shells to the cannon on the beach. The scheme then, of course, is foiled, however, when, the leader of the Saxon tribe and the rest of the Saxons arrive and engage in the fleeing Vikings in the nearby clearing. The monk then hides while the fighting is going on. Little did he know that the Doctor and his friends have been freed by Edith and basically tampered with the monk's TARDIS. With his scheme in ruins, the monk decides to leave and returns to the TARDIS. But when the monk looks inside, he realizes that the Doctor has taken the dimensional control, and basically his interior of the ship has shrunk beyond use, leaving him stranded in 1066. The Doctor, Vicky, and Steven then return to the TARDIS and make their way to wherever they're going next. So yeah, that was basically the plots of the Time Meddler, and a couple things noteworthy about this story. This is a couple firsts in Doctor Who. Well, one of them, of course, being the fact that this is the first Doctor Who story to not have any of the Doctor's companions from an unearthly child. So, starting from this story, the Doctor has a set of new companions. Vicky, who we've already seen since the rescue, and then of course Steven's proper first story as a companion. And of course, this is the first appearance of another one of the Doctor's kind, which was, of course, the meddling monk, played by Peter Butterworth. And, technically Susan counts as well because, she's the Doctor's granddaughter, but anyways. But yeah, this is also, the first story in Doctor Who that takes place during a historical time period, that being 1066. However, with some alien interference going on, well, besides the Doctor and the companions themselves. And this would become a staple in a lot of Doctor Who stories. Basically, after the Hartnell era, this would become kind of a recurring storyline with a lot of historical Doctor Who stories. And yeah, I think it was pretty interesting. It was, I liked the monk as a character. It was interesting seeing a character that basically had the same wits and same knowledge of everything as the Doctor, and both of them kind of got the upper hand of one another every now and then, and at the end the Doctor ended up winning, and yeah, the monk is stuck in 1066, not able to go back to whatever he was doing before. So yeah, it was overall really interesting. And of course, funny enough, the individual episode titles kind of reflect this whole ongoing battle between the two smartest characters in the episode, the Doctor and the monk. There of course was episode 3, which was titled A Battle of Wits, and then there was part 4, which was simply titled Checkmate, which I guess is sort of referred to the fact that the Doctor basically got the upper hand of the monk, having him stranded in the 11th century. So yeah, overall that was definitely the most interesting part of the episode. Sorry, not most interesting part. Most interesting part of the story was basically just the interactions of the Doctor and the monk, and, of course, Steven and Vicky as well. Really the only downside of the episode, I didn't personally care too much about, I guess the Saxons and the Vikings, they were kind of the least important part of the story. Kind of like the cavemen from An Unearthly Child, which, funny enough, speaking of An Unearthly Child, the actress who played Edith, the Saxon who was kind of an ally of the Doctor, Steven and Vicky, she also played one of the cave women in An Unearthly Child as well. So when I was watching that story for this review and I saw Edith, I'm like, why do I have the feeling that she looks familiar? And it occurred to me, oh my god, she was in An Unearthly Child as well. So that was interesting. And from what I've been looking at, that was, of course, unfortunately her only appearances in Doctor Who were just those characters, but anyways, that's just some interesting trivia for you. There probably have been other instances in Doctor Who before where there were actors who have played other characters in different stories. One I forgot to mention in The Chase, Peter Purves, who plays Stephen Taylor. In part 3 of The Chase, he played a Alabama guy with a very stereotypical Southern American accent. When the TARDIS crew was in New York, running away from the Daleks. But yeah, there have been several instances of actors playing, characters in different stories, but this is one of the first times I've ever really brought it up because, Edith and the cave woman from Not Ugly Child, look very similar, and I felt like it was important to bring that up. So with all those little details being said, actually one more thing I gotta mention. Apparently in the Doctor Who magazine in 2020, this was voted as the second best first Doctor story ever, according to, the people who subscribe to the magazine, which is interesting. Do I think it's, second place as best first Doctor story of all time? Well, seeing that I haven't seen every single first Doctor story, I can't really say that just yet. And personally, while this story is really good and all, especially, the moments with the monk and the Doctor and stuff, really the only things that in this story that kind of like weighted down for me was just, the Saxons and the Vikings, which, wasn't really the most interesting. But other than that, I feel like the monk parts of the story definitely make up for it and, definitely carries this story in my opinion. So for those reasons alone, I'm going to give the Time Meddler a solid 8 out of 10. And now time for me to wrap things up for today's episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more episodes of Came From England, or just mediocre plush content in general. Also, be sure to turn on the notification bell so you get notified each time I upload a new episode of It Came From England. My god, I'm stuttering so much. Or any of my other videos. And leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. And also let me know what you guys think of this color layout of the lights. Anyways, that's about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out. And seeing that we're getting very close to Christmas time, next episode will be something Christmas themed. What am I going to be talking about, you may ask? Well, probably not talk about one thing, or two things. I might try to go for 3. Maybe. We'll see what happens.